right, so newsletter time. So today I'm going to talk all about trust, why it matters, how you establish it, and then obviously how do you leverage it. So a little bit of a story. This is the third time I've recorded this video. The first time I recorded it, it cut off halfway. So literally what was supposed to be like about 15 minutes, which was only 7 minutes. The second time I did it, I had an echo on the microphone. Now we've sorted that out. So this is the third time. Hopefully this will go through and I'll be able to send this newsletter out so you get the value from it. So that said, let's get into it. So trust, why is trust important? Look, doesn't matter what you do in terms of how fancy your sales letter is or how fancy your video sales letter is, no matter what you put out there, if no one trusts you, they're never going to buy from you. That's the ultimate bottom line in terms from a business perspective. Like I can craft the perfect presentation. I could craft like the ultimate offer in terms of what would be relevant to my audience, what would be of value to them from my perception. But if they don't trust me, they're never even going to bother to even look at the offer, let alone purchase it. So it matters a lot. So also tied in with this, and this ties in with trust as well. One of the things that helps develop trust, certainly in our world today, like you probably heard the expression, we have an attention economy, like trying to get someone's attention has become harder and harder. You know, it's never been easier to reach 1 million people all at once. But it's also with that 1 million people that you can reach, you've also got millions of competitors as well. So you got all the same people competing for the attention of a small group of people. That's got harder. Now, my big thing, obviously, is that you need to understand, draw out your unique advantage, and you need to leverage that through everything that you do. So this all ties back to trust. So simple example here for me. I have never scripted a presentation in my life. Don't want to do it. It would drive me crazy. Not something I want to do ever. I know people who do it because they feel that that's not a strength of theirs to be able to just stand up and talk. But it's something that it's an aspect of my personality. It's an aspect of my personality that I've amplified through deliberate practice. So in the early days of developing my speaking skills, I would literally just pick a topic, get up on stage and just talk. And so I'd come up with X number of points and I played around with it that way. It's also the reason why, in a Q&A, I'm good at thinking on my feet. I'm pretty sharp in terms of my thinking. I'm pretty sharp at coming up with answers because that's just a strength. That's an innate strength, which I have then developed and utilized. Therefore, that's part of my unique advantage. So unique advantage is something which you bring to the table, which is of real value to the people that you want to influence, you want to impact, you want to transform, and is impossible for someone else to copy, which is why it's kind of a combination of things, but it sort of draws on your experiences, the things that have shaped your experiences, shaped your beliefs, all of those things kind of come together to really, and your personality to give you whatever is your unique advantage. So it's important. Now, the reason I say unscripted is, well, actually, let's start again. Let's break this down. If you wanted to develop trust with somebody, go back to fundamental first principles. How do humans learn to trust each other? So like, if you're walking, if we go back to our ancestors, we live in tribes because humans are tribal, because obviously being part of a tribe increases your chance of survival. If you get ostracized from the tribe and you're out on your own, your chances of surviving drop drastically. So it's been important to us to be social creatures so that we can be tribal, so that we can maximize the chance of survival. And we're still here today, so we obviously did a pretty good job of it. That's part of it. But then, of course, if somebody comes into the tribe from outside who is a complete stranger, what is typically our first emotional response is that our barriers come up. We are wary of this person. We don't know them, so therefore we can't trust them. But so what does it take then to learn to trust someone? So I'll give you a simple example. Let's say somebody's commuting to work. Let's say I was commuting to work. And on the way to work, I pass a coffee shop. I go in the coffee shop. There's a young lady who's the barista. I tell her what I want to drink. She makes the drink. She gives me the drink. I walk out. She's seen me once. We've had one interaction. Maybe the next day I go back in at the same time, order the same thing. This time she smiles at me. I smile back. I walk out. Day 3, I go in, repeat of day 2. Day 4, I go in. She says, "Oh, do you want your usual?" See, now she's realizing there's a pattern. Day 5, she's like, "Oh, here's your usual. I knew you'd be in at this time," and blah, blah, blah. Maybe we strike up a little bit of a conversation. Now there's an element of trust between us. Why? Well, one, because there were multiple interactions. So in other words, the frequency at which you are seen by someone else matters. And secondly, those interactions were pleasant. There was nothing that happened that was weird, that would cause someone to be untrusting of you. So therefore, it builds and builds more trust. So it's a bit like a bank. You can have a trust bank. And so you want to keep putting into that trust bank with your audience so that when it comes time to say, look, I want to make an offer to you, they're receptive to it, they're open to it. That's the first aspect. I touched on before about this idea I don't script presentations. It's like I want this newsletter to be raw. I want it to be just me kind of talking and letting the ideas unfold as I talk. Like I spend a lot of time reading, listening to podcasts on all the things that interest me. So therefore, I have this expression about connecting the dots. But in order to connect the dots, you got to collect the dots. So I collect the dots through just listening and reading all the stuff that are relevant to me, that's of interest to me. And then I connect it in a way that makes an impact in terms of what I want to do and how I want to transform people. So I've already collected all the dots. Then really all I'm doing is trusting myself that when I get up on stage or when I get up to talk to someone, the material that I'm focused on, the ideas will just flow. Because I've already collected it all. It's all in here. It's just a question of, can I put it together in a way that comes across in a way that makes sense, that's relevant, that's useful to you? And that's really part of it. But that rawness also plays a part in developing trust. Now, of course, you may not be like that. That might not be your personality, in which case you might want to script things or you might want to make notes before you deliver a video. And I'll talk about why video is more important. But all of those things, like an actor, for example, could put together a script and deliver it as if it's conversational. And that's important. That helps develop trust. So we live in an attention economy where attention is scarce. We also live in a trust economy where trust is scarce as well. I would say at this moment in time, because of everything that's happened over the last few years, the level of trust that people have in institutions, in governments, and so on is probably at an all-time low. You've then got the added risk factor that AI can make anybody look like they're doing anything. So you never know if what you're seeing is real or not. Added on top of that is, I know for a fact that you can, news channels, for example, might take a speech that somebody gave and then edit it so in a way that it changes the whole meaning of the speech and makes the person look like they were saying one thing when actually the original speech, they were saying something else entirely different. So we know all of that goes on. So being able to deliver something and be raw makes a difference in terms of trust. Like recently, as I'm recording this, in the United States, obviously they just had some elections. Trump's going to be back as president in January. And one of the things that he did was go on Joe Rogan's podcast. Now, regardless of whether you like the guy or not, and I'm talking about both of them, whether you like Joe Rogan or not, whether you like Donald Trump or not, irrelevant, doesn't matter. But what's important is Joe Rogan's podcast is completely unscripted. It's just completely two people sitting down, having a chat. Joe asking questions. Joe has an intense curiosity about people. He wants to know what drives them. He wants to know what experience have shaped their beliefs. He wants to know what's going on in their head and how they've arrived at the conclusion they've arrived at. That's what makes it interesting. But it's raw. It's 3 hours. It's unedited. That builds a level of trust. If somebody spends 3 hours listening to that, there is certainly a development of trust going on. You might still disagree with everything that both of them say, but there's a level of trust that you know that what they're saying is real, and that's important. Now, the other thing that's also shaped my thinking recently, I picked up Scott Alford. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a Canadian entrepreneur in the sort of coaching space. And I read his book, The Nuclear Effect. And in there, he lays out these 6 pillars of how you grow a sustainable business. That's like, obviously, one of the pillars is marketing and selling, which obviously is important. And in the beginning, when you're just starting out, is the only pillar you want to focus on. But once you get to a certain point, the other 5 pillars become necessary, because otherwise you'll just drive yourself into the ground trying to keep up with everything that needs to be happening. But within his marketing and selling pillar, he has this little acronym called ROI. Now, obviously, typically ROI we think of as return on investment. But he's been very clever, and he's turned ROI into his sort of where his marketing mnemonic, where the I is intimacy. So he's just rebranded trust as intimacy. And one of the ways in which he develops that trust with his audience is the O, which is omnipresence. So what he's suggested is that you be in all places at all times, so that wherever somebody goes online, you're there. So you probably know this already, but like, let's say I run an advert on Facebook, and let's say it's a video ad. And if I can track how much of that video ad you watch. So let's say you watch 20 seconds of it. Then I go, okay, if you watch 20 seconds, you're interested. So I can put you in a retargeting list, and I can then share that retargeting list across different platforms. So you could go on YouTube and I could pop up there. You could go on Instagram and I could pop up there. You could go anywhere and I follow you around with little different video snippets of me. All that exposure is the coffee shop effect. It's me going into the coffee shop and chatting to the young lady behind the counter, the barista, and over a period of time, there's an element of trust that is developed simply through repeated exposure, and it's a pleasant experience. Now, if all those videos were just pitching, that would destroy trust immediately, because that's not how we are as social creatures. We don't immediately ask for something from somebody. What we do is we just establish a bond. We treat each other nicely. We have pleasant experiences to deepen that bond of trust. Does that make sense? So that omnipresence is important. Now, the third part of that that's important is the fact that it's a video. So you go back to the early days, pre-internet. Let me just have a sip of coffee. Pre-internet, and I mean actually more accurately pre-World Wide Web, because obviously the internet was initially developed by the military, so it's been around since the 60s. But pre-World Wide Web, from a direct response marketing point of view, what we did was write sales letters. So we'd have put together a compelling offer. So the offer is like how you package what you want to offer, and then you send it out to people. And obviously, if the offer's good, people would buy the product. Like if somebody looks at your offer and goes, well, you're asking me for $10 and your offer is really going to give me $50 of value, then I'd be a fool not to take it. I'm going to buy it. That's how you want people to think. But if they look at it and go, well, your offer's kind of like worth about $1, but you want to get $10 from me, there's not really a good return for me. I'm not buying. That's how it is. So within a sales letter, you have a compelling offer, and you've probably heard the expression that the offer's everything. I'm not sure I agree with that completely, for one simple reason. If nobody reads your letter, they never get to the offer. So, of course, this became very apparent. So within the sort of science of sales letters, it was like, okay, we need a headline on the letter in order to get people's attention so that they then read the first line of the letter. And then you get this thing about the first line of letters designed to get you to read the second line is designed to get you to read the third line, so on, so on, so on. That's partly true, as in it's not the complete truth, because obviously if all it is junk, people might read it because it's funny, but it doesn't mean they're going to buy anything. So actually each line not only needs to get you to read the next line, but it also needs to educate you in some way to help establish trust, help establish a bond. So that by the time you get to the offer, you're ready to hear it, you're receptive to it, you're open to it, you're intrigued by it, and then when you've got to it, you can make an evaluation as to whether it's right for you and you want to buy it. Now, a good sales letter will probably get about a 1% response. Like if it's incredible, it might get a 3% response. So in other words, you send it out to 1,000 people, 10 people buy. A really good 30 people buy, 3%. Why? Because it's one modality. You're reading it. Now, if I go out and do a live presentation to a cold audience that have never seen me before and don't want to be pitched to, and when I did this on a regular basis, you're looking at maybe 20% conversion, which is high for a high level price, for like a $2,000, $3,000 package. How is that even possible? Because as soon as I go out on stage, one, like not that anybody ever does, but they can see me, they can hear me, and if they wanted to, they could come up and they could grab me and go, oh, he's real, he's flesh and blood, he's a proper human being. So there's that element of trust immediately because they can see me. They hear me. There's different and multiple modalities. See, hear, feel, taste, and touch. Those are the modalities. They can see me. They can hear me. They can hear my voice. They can hear the tone of my voice. They can hear the speed of the voice. They can hear the modulation of my voice, how I vary my voice tone, how I vary the speed of my voice. All of those things. They can see the gestures I make. They can see the smile on my face. They can listen to my stories and find them funny. All of that matters. And that helps develop more trust. So video matters online even more because you're not in person, obviously, but you can still leverage multiple modalities. They see you, hear you, listen to you, more engaged by you. So it becomes important. It's all about developing trust. It's all about I always go back to fundamental principles, evolutionary psychology. How do we develop trust? This is how we did it. So this is then leveraging that through the internet to give you a greater exposure to reach the people you want, to build the trust, so that when you do say, hey, I've got a great offer, like if you have an absolute solid bond with a group of people and they've known you, trusted you for a period of time, and you just come out and say, I've got this brand new program, There will be people that will jump on it straight away. They don't want to see a sales letter. They don't want to hear a webinar. They don't want to hear anything. It's like, trust you, I'm buying it. Whatever it is, it's going to be of real value. It's going to return more than I'm going to pay for it. I'll take it because you've got a deep, deep level of trust. And that's ultimately where you want to get to. So we live in an attention economy. You've got to get people's attention. We live in a trust economy because trust is scarce. You want to develop trust. And I would also say trust is the wrapper that goes around everything. Doesn't matter how great a sales presentation is. And like, if I'm doing a pitch, then I map out the slides. I think about the offer. I give it a lot of thought. I'll spend time putting the slides together. I don't script it, as I said, but I do have the slides to keep me on track. Otherwise, I go off on tangents. But I've got friends in the industry from way back who were more tactical. Like, I give you an example. One friend of mine, great speaker, done extremely well, but he had this thing about, putting a golden envelope under somebody's seat. A bit like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, like the golden ticket inside the chocolate bar, and you get, something, you get this great trip to the factory or whatever. But he had the same idea. So he stuck this, golden envelope under a seat. Like, you imagine a 1,000-seat auditorium. He's doing a presentation. He gets to that point in the presentation. He's like, there's a special deal. There's a special envelope under one person's seat. Everybody in there is up off their seat. They're looking, they're feeling the seat. Who's got the golden envelope? Somebody pulls out, I've got it. Wow, everyone's like, wow, you got it. You won it. I've lost out. Boom. That person comes on stage. They open the envelope. They read the offer. It's just a special offer they got to buy. And they either decide whether they want it or whether they want to give it away to someone else. And so there's a bit of pressure on them, obviously, and like all these eyes on them, and you're going to take it, or you're not going to take it. So it's very precious. It's not something that I like to do or would really want to do because it doesn't fit my personality. When it works great. Get it wrong, and it will blow up in your face completely, and you lose all trust with everybody in the room. But it's tactical. Again, it works if there's trust. Without it, it never works, and the risk of it is that it can destroy trust. So you got to understand trust is the wrapper around absolutely everything. So let me bring this home. Understand trust matters, really matters. How do you develop it? One, frequency of interaction with your audience. Secondly, pleasant interaction. The experience itself needs to be of value, needs to be useful, needs to be entertaining in some way, it needs to be engaging. 3, number of modalities that you use matter. If you're a writer and all you do is write and that's your strength, you don't want to do anything else, then write. But you're going to be writing a lot more. You're going to be telling more stories in your writing. You're going to make your writing more engaging to build that level of trust. And even doing one little video with it or even having audio with it would make a difference because it increases the number of modalities. Video is ideal because you can see, hear, feel because it's the stories. So use it. And then, of course, the absolute biggest element is be you. If you can be completely raw, unscripted, be completely raw and unscripted. If that takes a little bit of practice, it's a skill worth developing. If you can't be and you want to absolutely script it, please script it. But then learn to deliver it almost a bit like being you, but an amplified version of you, which is what actors do, so that it comes across still as conversational. Like when I started speaking, my whole outcome was I want my audience to feel, every single person in the audience, to feel as if we're sat down at dinner and we've just met and we've got engrossed in a really deep, interesting conversation. That's the feeling I want. It's conversational. Even though obviously if I'm on stage, it's me talking and they're listening. But it's still, my goal is I want it to be conversational. So think of that. And part of that is because it builds trust. Oh, the final piece of which I didn't talk about, humor. Humor builds trust. So like, again, as I've never scripted a joke. But there have been times, obviously, in a seminar where something happened and I'll say something and it's funny and the audience bursts out laughing. And when that happens, I go, oh, I'll keep that. I'll use it next time. So I've ended up building up this repertoire of jokes. Now, here's what's even more interesting. I know, because I've had times where I'll tell the joke and the audience absolutely is falling about giggling. And there are times where I've said the joke and like barely a murmur in the room. But that immediately tells me that I don't have trust. So I use it as a gauge. I use it as a way to measure trust. Humor is very powerful in that way. So then, of course, I have to recycle, go through things, backtrack a little bit, tell a few more stories to make sure I've got that trust. And then when I get back to another point and I throw another joke and then I get the response I'm looking for, I know, boom, got the trust. We can move on to the next stage. Now, I can't do that through video. I can only hope that you might find this engaging, entertaining, and laugh at if I have thrown in a few jokes, but I can't see it. So final thing then, remember everything I put in there. Trust matters. Break it down into the things you need to do. And what I would say is that if this was a live presentation, and the final thing, of course, is we do a Q&A. You could ask me any question, I would answer it, and I would help you. And obviously, in terms of how you use this, areas you can use it, how you would make it play to your natural strengths to draw out your unique advantage. I could answer all of that. But I can't do that. So what I will say is next best thing, drop me an email, ask me any questions about this that you want, anything that you want clarifying, anything that you'd like me to go deeper on, and I will answer the question. I will read everybody's answers, everybody's questions. I will answer them, because that's how also I can build a level of trust with you as well, by serving you at the level that I want to serve you, so I can help you get to the transformation and ultimately the goals and the dreams and the life that you want. All right, see you in the next episode of this newsletter. Talk to you then. Cheers.